Okay, well, it looks like I am live. So I haven't gone live for a while. I think the last time I went live was when I hit 10,000 subscribers, which was almost 5,000 subscribers ago. So I have decided this evening to give it a go again, and I will attempt to build out a Copilot, or an agent even, in Copilot Studio. So I'm going to go and crack on and see what happens. So I'm in Copilot Studio right now, as you can see, and there's some big announcements coming up actually in the next few days as part of Ignite to announce the new features involving the autonomous agents. And so what I thought I'd do tonight is to try and bring everyone up to speed prior to this announcement, really, just to give you a feel for what Copilot Studio can do. And I will build an agent, an IT bot in this case, and we'll attach it to different data sources. So the first thing I'm going to do is to jump into Copilot Studio and start with a new agent. We'll call this the IT Helpdesk agent, and I can give it a description. I can give it an instructions as well. The description is really for the developer, whoever is going to support this bot. The instructions is probably more important when it comes to the autonomous, but you can affect the behavior of your agent, give it instructions, and essentially it's a prompt. So if I was moving on to autonomous, I would definitely want to give some thorough instructions here, but I'm going to just crack on and create an agent that's not attached to any knowledge or data sources at this point. So while we're waiting for that to create an agent, I'm just going to bring up a couple of different screenshots, the first of which really explains the different types of agents that you can create in Copilot Studio, and basically the different pillars in effect. So at the moment we're at the level of creating retrieval agents, which is when you ground your agent in knowledge. So you can add different data sources, you can attach it to SharePoint and policy documents, etc. Or you might have some data in an Excel sheet or structured data, something in Dataverse. So by using the natural language, you can ask for a summary about something. The agent can go away, grab that data and summarize it. That is the concept of retrieval. And we've had that for some time now in the form of generative answers in Copilot Studio, and you can see it's generally available. The next thing is tasks, and that's, in my mind anyway, the generative actions. So being able to add in connectors like you do already across the Power Platform. You bring in connectors into your Power Apps, into your Power Automate flows. So the same thing applies here in Copilot Studio. You can bring in your connectors, you can build custom connectors, and those actions that you attach to your agent can be generative actions, and they're tasks ultimately. And that plays nicely into the autonomous piece, which obviously we're going to get some major announcements in the next few days, the stuff I've been very excited about. And I can probably show you a sneak peek because it has arrived in my tenant, albeit not fully. So we'll cover that a bit at the end. So that's a bit about the different pillars of agents that are available. We've also got a lovely screenshot here, another slide that shows you the sort of sliding levels of complexity of the different agents. And obviously today my focus was to build an IT help desk, and the basic simple example is how do I connect to the corporate network. That is very much a retrieval agent. But then when you move on to things like requesting a new laptop, then potentially you've got some actions involved there, because you might be looking up or booking a new laptop from an asset database or something like that. Maybe sending an email, so some actions there based on different connectors. And then obviously at the very end, the advanced, you've got your autonomous, so actually someone sending an email and saying, where is my laptop? And rather than an end user dealing with that on first line support, you've got an autonomous agent that is looking at policies, procedures and various data sources to see what the current state of play is with the laptop that's been requested. And so you're actually triggering those conversations through a trigger. And that's a big giveaway there, is that autonomous is going to be based on triggers. So rather than it being based on a chat interface, which you've been familiar in Copilot Studio to date, it will be via triggers, and it ties in very nicely into Power Automate Cloud Flows. So if I jump back into my agent, and at the moment out of the box, it has knowledge, which will use its own general knowledge. And I can see actually that feature was in preview a couple of days ago. It's now in GA by the looks of it. And so if I was to ask the question, it would be able to retrieve information from a broad knowledge from the internet, but I'm actually going to turn that off so it has knowledge of nothing in effect. And so if I was to ask what is Copilot Studio down here in the bottom corner here, hopefully it's going to say I don't have an answer for that, which is correct. There is no answer for that. So the way that an agent works in Copilot Studio is it works through the orchestration of topics and then generative capabilities. So at the moment I've got topics here, I've got the ability to greet, to start over, to thank you. And if I wanted to create topics with a specific workflow, then very much I could go and start from blank, and I could use this interface here, add in different nodes, create a structured workflow to work through if I was to trigger that topic. And topics at the moment, at least, are based on trigger phrases. So if I was to jump back into one of these default topics, like we'll go into the greeting one, and you can see here it's based on different phrases. So good afternoon, good morning, etc. So based on me saying good morning, this particular topic will trigger and it'll ask, how can I help you today? And that's the traditional way of creating a conversation with your previously Power Virtual Agent, but now an agent in Copilot Studio. And that was very much a structured approach. But if there is no match with any of these topics, and I was to ask something like, what is Copilot Studio, as I did a second ago, and you'll see there it says no information was found that could help answer this. So this is purely for debug right now. But what's happening if I turn on track between topics, if I jump across onto actions and, sorry, not into actions, onto topics and into system, there is a conversational boosting topic. And you'll see here that it triggers based on unknown topic. And so if the agent has had a look through all the different topics that you've built with your structured content, and it's not found a match, it's going to fall back into this unknown topic. And so if I jump into this conversational boosting, into this trigger on unknown intent, there is a create generative answers node, and that generative answers node will retrieve answers based on knowledge. And at the moment, because there's no knowledge, it can't find anything. So what I have previously built over on SharePoint is a document library, and in there I've got a few different policies, IT policies, based on, for instance, IT hardware. So if I pop that open, we've got an IT hardware replacement policy, and we can see that every 3 to 4 years you're allowed a new laptop. And if I was to go and ask my bot at the moment, how often can I replace my laptop, it will attempt to go into the knowledge sources and find an answer, but of course I've not got any knowledge at the moment. So if I jump across onto my knowledge, I can go and add in some knowledge, and one of those options is SharePoint. So if I copy the URL, including the document library in this case, and paste that in and add it, and I can also update this description, because again the description is very important for the language model. So this knowledge source provides information, and if I delete the end of this, information based on current IT policies and procedures. And if I add that in reasonably quickly, it should be ready. In fact, very quickly. Remember, this is live, so I'm quite impressed that it's going at this pace. But if I go and ask again, how often can I replace my laptop? And again, I've misspelt replace. It should, as we can see, jump into generative answers. It's unknown intent, and we've got here an answer: laptops can be replaced every 3 to 4 years based on company's IT hardware replacement policy. And there's a link there to that document. So these documents that I've got on my SharePoint are now grounded. We've added them into our agent. And similarly, I could ask, how can I be a digital champion? Which of course is crucial if you want to drive the adoption of your agents, your Copilot Studio, or your Power Platform adoption. And so we have a policy here, the Digital Champions policy, and a nice summary of how you can become a digital champion. So that, in its basic form, if we have a look at that original slide that I showed you, is a retrieval agent. It's being grounded on some data, we've added in knowledge, and now we can ask questions and we can retrieve data. And you'll see that when I built that, I didn't need to build any topics. I just needed to add in my knowledge. And so the next stage, really, if I'm going to have a look, if I bring up again that slide, is tasks. So take actions when asked, automate workflows, and replace repetitive tasks. So this is known as actions, and I just so happen to have an issue tracker SharePoint list, and what I'd like to be able to do in its basic form is supply an issue number, or in this case an ID. So I'm going to make it very simple in this case and just use an ID for the ideal demo as it's live. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to add in the action to get item, and then by supplying the ID we should see that we can populate that action and retrieve some data. So at the moment, if I was to ask what is the current information about my ticket number 4, it's probably going to go through generative answers and say, I have no idea what you're on about, because there will be no information. Oh, the current status ticket is not mentioned in the available documents. There we go. So we can check by contacting the IT help desk. But if we go into actions, and if we add an action, and if I change this to get item, so this is looking across the Power Platform at connectors as you know them, and it's filtering on custom connectors. Let's toggle it to all connectors. Let's see if we can get this to appear. Get item is what I'm looking for. There we go. Get item for SharePoint. So if I select that, and it's going to create a connection, and I'm going to use user authentication description. So this will enable the agent to retrieve details of a help desk call. And what we've got here, we've got the action name, get item, display name is going to be get item, but we can change that to get help desk item, and the description I'm going to update to the same. This will enable the agent to retrieve details of the help desk call, and we'll go to next. Now the interesting thing here is that, as you can see, there are inputs and outputs, and so the input at the moment is going to be, in theory, populated via, well, various settings here. But if I go into edit, I can change how these things are populated. So the site address, for instance, I do not want it to be set dynamically. It's already suggested it sets it as a value. So if I jump back to my SharePoint site, I can grab the URL for that site and I can hopefully paste it in. And by doing so, if I set the value of the list, I would hope that it is going to give me a drop down. Let me try this again, because I would hope that by selecting a site, it will then enable me to select a list. Otherwise, we will go for pasting that in also. And this could be the joys of doing things live. So I'll copy the list name, I'll paste that in. The ID I'm going to say dynamically, and ultimately I'm going to ask the bot or the agent to check on case 4, and it should hopefully dynamically populate this ID and then look up the item. So the output is just a full response, and I'm going to leave that as it is right now, and we'll finish up and see what happens. And all being well, I'll be able to ask it the question about that specific item 4. So you'll see at the top here, in order to respond with the best combination of actions and topics using generative AI preview, this is quite an interesting feature that I don't think people necessarily understand what it does. But if I go across to that setting, it's the generative AI tab. If I hit the cross top right, I'll go back into that. So it's via the settings pane here, we can go into generative AI, and out of the box it's set to classic, and you'll be able to set it to generative. And by setting it to generative, what it does is, if you remember I showed you the topics at the beginning, they have the trigger words. Well, if I change it to generative, the first thing that will happen is our topics will now get a description rather than their trigger words. And also actions, rather than being DOM, if that's a good way of describing it, they will become dynamic. So those actions will now be able to be called dynamically or generatively based on my conversation with the agent. So it basically changes the way that the agent selects topics and selects the actions. And if we go back to, first of all, our topics, if I go into that greeting topic, you'll see that we did have the trigger words. We now have a description. And this is where the description plays a big part in many places across your agent now, because the language model is going to use these descriptions to dynamically select either topics or, hopefully in my case, my action. And that's why in the action I have suggested that it will enable the agent to retrieve details of a helpdesk call. So if this works first time, it'll be magical. But if I ask what are the details for my helpdesk call 4, what we should see is, because I've got the activity map, we can see it's dynamically chosen to get the helpdesk item. And interestingly, actually, we can see that it's put the number 4 into the ID. So the website address was fixed, the list name was fixed, but this ID has been pulled out of the conversation and identified by the language model. Now, it's failed, but that's probably because it's the first time I've run this and I don't have an active connection. So if I just fix that, and then hopefully, if I jump back onto my agent and retry, we will get a working action. We've got 404. So I'm going to try and work with this action. Something is clearly not set up. We have seen it dynamically populate the ID number, which is what I expected. But for some reason, it's not happy with something, and it might well be, here we go, it is now working with the, don't know if you saw that, but it allowed me to dynamically select the issue tracker, whereas last time I had to paste. So let's save this and try again. And then hopefully, if I ask what are the details of helpdesk call 3, you can see now it's populated 3 in the in the number, and look what we've got here. So we have needs a floppy disk drive to install a legacy app, and if I jump across onto my list, we can see that number 3 has need a floppy disk drive to install a legacy app. So very quickly we've added in an action into our agent, and because we've enabled, if we go into that settings, because we've enabled the generative feature in our agent, it's now able to dynamically choose between either topics or actions. And if I was to potentially push it to the max here, because I know that the orchestration piece of Copilot Studio has been improved dramatically. It should be able to recognize multiple items. So if I was to say, how often can I get a new laptop, and can you give me an update on Helpdesk call 2 this time? In theory, I've not tried this, but it should recognize both intents and actually, first of all, look up knowledge and then go to get item. And we can see, amazingly, it's gone to knowledge source first, and then it's done get items. And we have the response here. Company policy states laptops are every 3 to 4 years. And then regarding your help desk call, with regards to ID2, software needs updated. And again, if I went to have a look at my list here, we can see that it was indeed the software needs updated on ID2. So that's very much us now achieved the task-based agent by adding in an action. What about the autonomous piece? That's the piece we're all looking for, and the piece that I've been trying to put together over the weekend, hoping that it would be available my tenant. I'm going to have to wait like everyone else until Tuesday, Wednesday of this week. But if you go into the overview, you might have spotted that there is add a trigger. And for me, this was quite exciting because obviously I love Power Automate. So to see that we have Power Automate arriving now in Copilot Studio as part of the autonomous agents, it all makes sense to me. And if you click on the learn more, this is a bit that I was hoping there would be some more details, but it'll be coming, I'm sure. If I jump back onto my agent, we can maybe just try and get as far as I was able to get to, and at least this will make some sense, hopefully. So we've got an agent here. This agent at the moment is able to look at our IT policy documents and it's able to get items from a list. We could also add in an action that would allow us to send an email. I think that would be another good thing just to have, because ultimately autonomous agents are going to be able to make decisions based on the different actions that you've added. That's the whole purpose about these autonomous agents, is we're not going to give it a script. And we've already seen how dynamically it's able to look at our data source and retrieve, and also look at different actions and use those actions. So if I add in the send an email action and just test that, and then I'll go and show you a bit of the autonomous. So let's just get this set up. Again, description is important. So sends an email, and I'm going to fix some of these inputs because it will make my life potentially easier. I will set the subject to "this is a test," and I'll leave the body as it is, and I will leave the "to" as it is as well, actually. And we'll go on to next and finish this. So what we're doing now is just like I did with the get item, is I'm adding in the send an email action. And with it enabled, in theory, I can say, what does it take to be a digital champion? And can you email me the details? And I'm just going to, well, I'll wait for this to finish and then I'll open up another tab. So it's going to knowledge sources, which you'd expect to go and have a look at the IT policy documents. And it's now trying to send an email. It's picked out my email address because it knows who's logged on. We've got this fail again because it's the first time I've used this action. So I do need to get the connection for Office 365 Outlook set up. But if I jump back, and I'm just going to pop open another tab, I'll take that off screen just so I can check my email, make sure I've not got anything in there that I shouldn't have. Okay, so if I go and I've already got that connection. If I go and retry, let's see what happens. Oh, I've just got a ping. So I've just received my email. To be a digital champion, candidates must meet criteria, etc. So a link to the document. So this has sent an email based on that ask. I asked, what does it take to be a digital champion, and can you email with details? Let's just try that again, see if we can do it without getting an error. And if I have a look at, in fact, can you send me an email about the help desk call 1? And so this should use the get item, and then it should send an email. And I've just had a ping, and I have help desk call details 123, a broken PC. So this isn't quite autonomous yet. This is obviously me just demonstrating some of the generative capabilities using both the actions and the new orchestration that allows you to ask multiple questions. But what this means now is if I go back to the overview, if I add in a trigger, and everything I've done so far has involved me asking a question via the chat interface, but imagine now this is autonomous. This is actually me sending an email to the help desk to say, hey, where's my new laptop? Or hey, give me an update on the status of my help desk call 4. So just like we normally see in Power Automate, we have these triggers. And one of the exciting ones, of course, is a recurrence. So if you've got things that you want your agent to do every day, then you can trigger it, of course, based on that schedule. But I'm going to do it based on when a new email arrives, and hopefully get it all signed in. And we will fill in all the bits and bobs. What do we need to fill here? We have got a 2. So this is exactly the same as you normally see in Power Automate, but actually, if I go ahead and just create this, because ultimately what it's doing is it's creating a Power Automate flow. And so whilst it might not look so great here, we should be able to open it up in Power Automate. And for all those that like the new designer, we'll see the new designer. I'm just going to have a quick swig of my juice. So remember, this is a trigger. So this is basically how we're going to trigger our autonomous agent. And so the aim will be that I'll send an email, I'll ask a question about my help desk call, rather than this conversation coming in via a chat interface, which is what we're normally used to because agents are traditionally chatbots. It's going to come in via an email now, and it will be able to trigger my agent. And this is a bit that didn't fully work for me when I was testing it over the weekend, and I got a bit sad because I really wanted to do a demo for everyone. But this is a familiar piece now for everyone, hopefully, is Power Automate. So the concept of when a new email arrives, I could go in here and I could put in specific filters, etc. But the new action is this one here. So send a prompt to the specified Copilot. If I go to About and into Learn More, you can see that there is a connector for Microsoft Copilot Studio, and the particular action is called Execute Copilot. And so that's what this action here is. It's the Execute Copilot action. And it's passing in a message, use content from body. So I am going to stick with that. In fact, let's give it a go and stick with that. And I'll go across onto my email and I will send an email to myself. Hopefully I haven't got lots and lots of triggers set up here. Let me bring across a new email. Here we go. New email. So everyone's going to see my email address. Please do not email me, but IT Helpdesk, because I will turn this off once it's finished. So can I get an update on my Helpdesk call number 3? And I haven't tried this yet, so I don't think this is going to work. But what we should see is if I go into the flow and I go back, we should be able to see the history when it eventually triggers, which will be the first piece of the puzzle. And certainly when I was testing this at the weekend, it would trigger, the flow would run, the flow would complete, but unfortunately it didn't run the agent piece, but you can still force it to run in the test interface, which is a bit that I want to show you. So because this is the first time it's run, it's probably going to take a wee while just for it to trigger on the, there we go, it's run, perfect. Can't believe it's all going reasonably well so far. So when an email arrives, so I've just sent in an email to myself, and in the inputs, hopefully, did I get the, maybe I didn't get the content of the email. Let's have a quick look here. Ultimately, what I want to see is what I've sent across. Use content from, and it's used the body, which doesn't include, does it include the email? It doesn't include the email, right? This won't work. So I need to, when a new email arrives, does it actually include the content? Let's have a look at the dynamic content here. We've got from subject, the body of the message. That's what I'm looking for as the body. I know what this is. This is the new designer. It is not splitting, so it creates an array. So I need to actually turn on splitting. So I don't know if anyone's come across this, but the new designer by default on triggers will actually turn split off, which means that all your responses come through as an array, which is why it's put me into a loop here, which is not ideal because it's sending through multiple responses at once. So if I just delete that and we can try again into dynamic content, and if I select body, and we'll give that a quick test. I might have to do a manual because it will be coming through as an array again and it'll fail. So let's try again. And I'll fix that error in a second. Can I get an update on my Helpdesk call? But before I send it, let's just get this published. Let's see if we can save it and publish it. The recurrence property. Let's try this. It's not playing ball. I might have to switch back across to the classic. Is it going to let me? I'm not going to be defeated. Otherwise I might have to go with the loop. Let's go with the loop. Let's delete the trigger. This could be fun. There is me saying everything was working well. So when an email, otherwise what I might do is I might go with, oh, see the split is on by default on that one, which is what I was expecting. So when an email arrives and use content from and body, let's see if we can get this saved and published. Yes, okay. So that's that published. If I bring up that email again that's ready to send, Helpdesk update, update, right. We'll send that and I will go back here and we'll do a wee refresh and wait for that email to arrive. And meanwhile, I'll jump across onto my agent in Copilot Studio. So you'll see the triggers. The interesting thing you've got here, obviously there's a link to Edit and Power App, but there's also this little chap, which I've now forgotten the name of, but those who do science experiments, is that a conical, a flask? It's a test icon anyway. You can see I've got the history of the 2 flows that have been triggered, and in fact if I jump back across now and refresh, we'd probably see the one from 8:48. So there we go. There is a link between our Power Automate and our agent. And so what in theory will have happened is the flow will have run, it will have sent a prompt, and if we have a look at the raw input, I hope this time, use content from, and in this HTML there will probably be my message. I can see a bit of it in there. It's sent across in HTML, which might confuse the agent. So what I might have to do is convert it into text, but ultimately what it's doing is it's passing that across to our agent. That is the trigger and the action, and you'll see that there's a conversation ID. So it's started a new conversation with that agent. That's the autonomous piece. Now we can't see it because there is no chat interface. This is an autonomous agent, but we can test it, and I'll show you how. So if I refresh this, because we've got this little, refresh it again, if we hit this test piece here, and I can select one of the runs, so the 2048, if I hit start testing, we can see here trigger detected, and it will pass in all that data. It's actually populated ID 3 into that get helpdesk item, and it has said your helpdesk call number 3 is currently new status, blah blah blah. So because I didn't specifically say can you email me the details back, it's not replied. But if we try that once more, and I'm going to simplify this as well by converting the HTML to text, I would love to demonstrate it actually sending an email. If I go and select that body again, that will tidy up the text string, and we can put that in there. So use content from blah blah, and reply to, and send, I can't reply because I've not added the reply action, but send an email to the original address. And actually I could use the dynamic content here, so from, and if I publish that, I'll bring up my email again. I can send myself an email and say helpdesk update. Can I get an update on my helpdesk call 4? Send that across. Now of course we're not going to see it running. We know that the flow is running, but this is a small bit that's not there, the piece of the puzzle that I need to make this fully autonomous, but we can test it in the agent. So once this has come through, it's succeeded, we can have a look at that run, and we can see in here what's been sent across. So it says use content from, and then can I get an update on my helpdesk call 4, blah blah blah, all the bits and bobs for my signature, and send an email to the original address, my email address. If I jump back across here, and if we refresh, go into the overview, back down to triggers, we can go to test trigger, choose the one from just now, hit start testing, and then we should be able to see the test interface down the bottom here unfold. Your helpdesk call ID 4 still not sent an email. Well, obviously it's my first attempt at doing this, but what we've hopefully demonstrated is the autonomous piece, which the bot is not relying on me talking to it via the traditional chat interface. It's acting on a trigger. That trigger is when an email arrives. I would have liked it to actually send an email back to myself. I wonder if because it was the trigger was, that text was just there. In fact, I'm going to try it one more time, and then I'm going to call it a night, because that'll be an hour of me being live. But hopefully that's given you an idea of retrieval, of task, and of autonomous, which is due to come, and obviously me being highly excited because it's Power Automate. But if we try this one last time, I'll go into my flow, I can go into edit, and I will change this prompt saying, I'll put that at the beginning, send an email to the original address and use content from this. Let's see what happens. We'll publish the change. I should be able to test it on the original. In fact, I don't even need to do it here. I can just go back across onto my agent, refresh, back onto overview, down to my test, start the testing. That's not going to work because it's still got at the end. I need to actually trigger it from here to get a new run with the new data. Into test, into automatic. Let's get this new one coming through. That should change my prompt. Send an email to the original address. That's good. That's what I want at the beginning. Refresh this one last time into the overview. There's the one from 2055. Start the testing. Go on. Send an email. Look what I've got. Superb. 2055. Can I get an update in Helpdesk call 5? Laptop has restarted before the meeting. There we go. So it's not perfect by any means, but you can see there through this orchestration activity map that based on my incoming email, we have triggered our flow. We've converted that body into text from HTML, passed that into the new action, which is the new Copilot Studio action. And then off the back of that, it has looked up the Helpdesk item, and then it has sent an email. So we've had an autonomous agent respond to our email query by combining the Power Automate with Copilot Studio. And whilst the demo is being done here in the test interface, obviously in a few days' time, hopefully that last piece of the puzzle will be able to come together, and I'll be able to get that email sent automatically without even having to rely on this test pane. So thanks very much for everyone that's come along tonight. I've been humming and hawing about a video all weekend about what I should cover, and this idea got me quite interested. So please do let me know if this has been of use to you. I see there's been a few comments. Good to see a few familiar faces on there as well. And I will hopefully get a video out soon of how you achieve this fully end to end. So thanks very much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Cheers.